Hi, I'm David Coulthard, and welcome to F1 Unscripted, part of the Heineken Non-Race Sundays series. Well, my guest this week is none other than Sir John Young Stewart, otherwise known as Jackie, or so famous that three letters will do, JYS. Three-time world champion, of course. So, Jackie, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, David. And you're looking good.
Thank you very much. Well, I've been trying to come up with creative ways to keep myself busy on a non-race weekend, but you're possibly the busiest man that I've ever spent time with. So let's get straight to it. How have you been filling your weekends without Grand Prix?
This has been the best part of my life since I left school. I've had nothing to do. I've walked my dogs. I've looked after my wife. I've sat out and taken the sun. You know what, David? I haven't missed it. I'm looking forward to going to another Grand Prix, but I really haven't missed it. So that I've been very lucky.
But I can see there, Jackie, in the background, you've got a lovely image hanging on the wall. And I know you're very kindly going to talk us through, take us down memory lane with some of the images from your own racing career. So we go way back to the very beginning.
Yes, well, starting as I did in Scotland, like you did, but I got to Formula One quite quickly, actually. Formula 3 was my big breakthrough, and Ken Tyrrell gave me that right. But then it only lasted a year until I was into Formula One. And then one of my first races in Formula One, in fact, is one of the photographs you're going to see. This is Monaco. Now, for those who haven't been in Monaco in those days, just forget Jackie Stewart and the BRM. By the way, I led the race and then spun in oil. Luckily, didn't hit anything and continued to finish third. But look behind the car there. These BP things are wrapped around the bollards that were immovable, David. There's no drop-off area. There's nothing to stop a car from getting into the harbour. But the bollards, that was the bollard, one of these bollards that actually happened when the terrible crash with Bandini, who died in his car that day. But that just shows you what we were doing in motor racing in those days. It was just completely different. And safety wasn't even discussed. But of course, the racetrack was just the same. It hasn't changed very much at all. And, like you, I enjoy going to the Monaco Grand Prix, probably one of the most enjoyable weekends of the calendar.
Yeah, well, I think that as we move through these images, we see there the late, great Jim Clark, of course, a great friend of yours. And that must have been very special for you to not only have come into Formula One just behind Jim, but then to share podiums and to get victories alongside him.
That was one of the biggest days of my life because it was only a second or third Grand Prix and I finished second to Jimmy. We lapped the entire field, the two of us, in pouring rain, ridiculous rain. But he finished up 23 seconds ahead of me, had time to change from his overalls into a shirt and a sweater. And then the first thing he asked me was, "Are you okay?" Because he was worried about me because he was getting the messages. I was 25 seconds, and I was keeping up with him. And he was thinking I was driving too fast because I'd never been there before. And that other picture that we've got up there right now, that's obviously the intimacy that we had together. We shared an apartment together in London that used to belong to John. Well, it did belong to John Whitmore, one of our best friends, and I think how you would have remembered. But that's just a typical thing that goes on in those days. The camaraderie of Formula One drivers together, was completely different than it is today. Yeah. And then Jimmy and I, of course, both being Scottish and everything, there was a sort of Scottish mafia factor.
Yeah, I remember you telling me when I was a young racer about the Scottish Embassy, the apartment you shared in London.
That's right, we call it the Scottish Embassy. And of course, there's Helen up there on the pit counter right now. In those days, the wives took the lap charts and the lap times of every single lap. And with one split-second stopwatch, 26, 28 cars, more than that sometimes. So that's a good example. That's just exactly what it was like. And the girls dressed up really beautifully. Of course, it was the flying 60s and 70s. And then we'd go back to London. Jim Clark was, of course, a bachelor. Jackie Stewart was married. The Scottish Embassy, every time Helen and I knocked on the door, we didn't know which girl was going to be there. But there was none. I think 60s and 70s were the halcyon years. I don't care who you are, where you've been, and what you've done. The excitement, the glamour, the colour, the whole atmosphere, the sort of, as you would have loved it, particularly the free love and all that sort of stuff. It was amazing because you would get to Monaco, where we saw the picture the other day. There would be Peter Sellers, there'd be the Rolling Stones, there'd be obviously the Beatles went there. George Harrison became one of my best friends, but he came almost every year. But Cary Grant was there, Frank Sinatra got there, Elizabeth Taylor were there. Monaco has been that magic and that sort of just a complete way of pulling people in. It was, and it still is, yeah.
But I can't help but notice a photograph beside your Heineken bottle there, and although the image is small, is that Sean Connery? Is that James Bond?
Yeah, that's Sean. And actually, the photograph is dedicated to Helen, not to me. But Sean's become again one of my great friends, and I brought him to Monte Carlo for the Grand Prix one year, and who was it? There was a couple of us got there, but anyway, Sean was a shy man in reality, but I mean he attracted a lot of attention.
It was a traumatic period as well, Jackie, and it wouldn't be right to look back over your career and your life if we didn't touch on that a little bit, because your trophy cabinet is incredible. You've got those 3 world titles, 27 Grand Prix victories from only 99 races. But you're probably as well known, if not better known, for the campaign that you led from the front on safety. And that was sort of sparked by a traumatic incident, a big crash you had at the Belgian Grand Prix. Talk us through that. You were trapped in the car.
Well, that was the beginning of it. There was no doubt we recognised the danger, but there was a big run of deaths as well. But in 1966, pouring rain, in those days at Spa, they wouldn't allow you to have a warm-up lap, just in case you didn't want to race anymore. It was so dangerous. But dry at the start by Bonneville, which is the first proper, well, Eau Rouge is first, and then Bonneville at the top of the hill. 7 Formula One drivers went off the road and crashed quite heavily. I wasn't one of them because I had made a bad start, but I went down the Master straight and there wasn't a car ahead of me, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing quite well. In fact, John Surtees and Jochen Rindt were ahead of me. They had gone through the rubbish before I did. And then at the Master Kink, which is the corner, everybody's talks about, Eau Rouge being a great challenge. Master Kink was the one. You went flat through the Master Kink, right, left, right. And there was a river of water going on because of the severe water. I mean, it was a real storm. And I aquaplaned and I went off the road. I knocked down a telegraph pole. I knocked down a woodcutter's hut. And I ended up with the car, me sitting in the car, but unconscious. And I was wrapped around the car. Keep in mind, it was the first lap. So therefore, the fuel tanks had ruptured inwardly. So it was right up to my neck in high-octane fuel. In those days, it was aviation fuel, much more caustic than it is today. Anyway, Graham Hill came down, hit the same river of water. So also did Bob Bondurant, the American driver, same river of water, did the same as me, but because there was nothing left to hit. So they came to a stop and got me out the car. Eventually, getting spanners from a spectator's car to take the steering wheel off to get me out of the car. No marshals, no first aid, no communications, nothing. They put me in the back of a hay truck in a barn of the farm that I had nearly run into. Do I go on with this story? It's a bit tricky. I get into the barn, they carry me and put in the back of a hay truck, and I'm burning, absolutely burning with this high octane fuel. And I was going in and out of consciousness, and I said to Graham, God's sake, can you get off my clothes? I'm burning, I've got to get off air. Graham Hill took all of my clothes off. He was very good at taking the clothes off, mostly of young ladies rather than the men. But I lay naked in the back of this hay truck when he went to try and find some spectators. 3 nuns arrived. This is a true story. 3 nuns arrived.
You were unconscious at this point. This is a fantasy.
Unconscious and conscious. Anyway, they looked at me. They couldn't believe what they were looking at. First, they were very surprised, and then they were impressed. They had only seen English racing drivers before that. But anyway, Graham came back and they tried to put my clothes back on. And, Graham's trying to take my clothes back off again. God knows what they were thinking. But that was Spa. No facilities. The ambulance finally came, took me to the so-called medical centre, which was a concrete floor with cigarette ends on it, and then put me in an ambulance that lost its way to the hospital. So that was the beginning of Jackie taking a wee interest in safety.
You were campaigning and getting tracks like the Nürburgring, the great Nürburgring. You had one of your greatest victories around that circuit, where I think you won by several minutes, and we've got an image there in the rain, and it was horrible conditions. But on one hand, you're campaigning to get circuits like that either upgraded significantly or taken off the calendar. And on the other hand, you're risking clearly as much as the other drivers, and presumably more when you're going faster than them and winning races. So I struggle to understand how you were able to separate the Jackie out of the car, campaigning for safety, fire retardant materials, all that sort of thing, and then the helmet going on and just winning, and taking the same risks that others were taking.
I think the lights go out, David. I think, when we were getting so many people killed, keep in mind, let's say in 1968, we lost Jim Clark on the 7th of June. Then in May, Ludo Scaffiotti got killed. In June, Mike Spence got killed in the 60s in that time. Then Ludovico Scaffiotti got killed in June, and then in July, Joe Slesser got killed at Spa, at the French Grand Prix, and his car burst into flames and fuel all over the road. We were driving through all that fire, and they never stopped the race. That's when we all started to realise that we couldn't go on the way we were. Nobody was doing safety in any way. The Nürburgring was the next race after these 4 drivers went. And I won the race, that picture there, by over 4 minutes. And I had time to go right around the big loop, get to the start-finishing line, get out the car, give my watch to Ken Tyrrell. The first question I asked is, everybody okay? Now, at the Nürburgring, if a big accident can happen sometimes, you lost sight of the car because what you thought was a small fir tree was actually the top of 100-foot fir tree, and there was a big drop-off. So you lost a lot of drivers down those drop-offs, and you would never know that they weren't there, or they were there. And it became ridiculous. So I was the president of the Grand Prix Drivers Association by then. Then the GPDA had real power. And eventually, what we had to do, none of the tracks would do anything. We asked them, we did. I was doing a track inspection in Jarama, the Spanish Grand Prix, the day Jimmy died. I had chosen not to race at Hockenheim. Jimmy was there and sadly got killed that day. We had all our drivers do visits to the racetracks, and Jochen Rindt was the one who went to the Nürburgring. And 14.7 miles, 187 corners per lap. they would not do one thing. So we had a meeting after Piers Courage's memorial service in St Paul's Cathedral. All the Grand Prix drivers met in the Savoy Hotel with Louis Stanley, had a suite there. And I said, guys, we can't go to the Nürburgring. They won't do a thing. Oh, how do we get out of that? I said, well, we just say we're not going to go. Oh, maybe we'll lose our drives and so forth. And it was like that. And I thought I was going to lose it. If I had lost it, I would come out of being president of the GPDA. And Jack Brabham stood up and said, you've got to go behind Jackie on this, because going on like this, there's going to be far too many deaths. We've got to make a statement. And we closed the Nürburgring and we closed Spa. Two of the best racing tracks in the world, the most demanding, the most challenging, the most enjoyable. But they would do nothing. So safety, we've got safety today in Formula One Grand Prix racing, David, which is better than any other activity in the world. More people die falling off horses or having rugby accidents than they do in Formula One. And our cars we're living in a survival cell, the drivers today. And the cars themselves are deformable structures. When they hit something, it comes off easily without a lot of G-forces. So the racetracks have now improved fantastically. Runoff areas, deformable structures. All the things that I guess everybody who's interested in motorsport watching this right now can see it. But to go back and see it in those days and see the fatalities. Roger Williamson was in fire underneath his car, and we never stopped the race. It's not the driver's decision, it's the organiser's decision. Joe Slesser, exactly the same thing. Piers Courage, exactly the same thing. And we knew that it was Piers because his helmet came off, and we knew he was dead. And Jochen, well, his best friend probably, and one of my best friends, we knew it was him. We continued to race. Jochen won, I was second. The only thing we could do was not drink champagne or not wave to the crowd. We only dipped our head in sorrow.
Did you ever feel fear? Did you ever think about stopping before that moment? What was it, and what is it inside the competitor? And we see you, Francois, there, a tremendously handsome man. Not that you're not a handsome man yourself, Jackie, but he could get the attention of the ladies.
He did a lot of damage. He was looked after by more girls than any, but even David Coulthard, he was pretty fantastic. He was a great, great friend. He was a top-line driver. He would have been number one driver in the Tyrrell team the following year. That would have been 74. Jody Scheckter was going to be the second man in the team. And at Watkins Glen, Ken Tyrrell said to me at the end of practice on the Friday, Jackie, and he was the only one that knew I was going to stop. Nobody knew I was going to stop. He said, Jackie, tell you what, we've been winning so many races, and he's been second to you. It'd be really nice if you would let Francois win. And what will be your 100th Grand Prix? And I said, oh, Ken, that's a tough one. You know, I would love to win my last Grand Prix and step away. But he said, Jackie, you would be a giant if you did that. And I said, look, let's wait until after qualifying to see what the rest of the competition is like first, and then let's talk again. And of course, that was never to happen because Francois got killed in the first session on the Saturday morning and was killed instantly. And every one of us had to go to Francois because it was obvious in practice that the racetrack was closed. The debris was so big. And in my whole life, I've never seen anything so terribly bad. And every one of us were destroyed by what we saw in that accident. And therefore, you know, he never got to win that race. But I decided to withdraw from the race because I thought in respect to Francois, it would have been wrong for me to go out just because it was my last race. So I only did my 99 Grand Prix. We in those days had some sort of system that we just blocked out. I mean, I know that I turned out to be totally emotional. when I drove a racing car. When Jochen Rindt died, one of my best friends again, 45 minutes later, Ken Tyrrell says, it's right to go out again. You've got to go out. They've got the barrier fixed. And I had been to Jochen, and Jochen was dead when I was standing beside him. I know that. And it was just terrible. And I went back, I got into the car, and for the first time in my life, I burst into tears in the car. And Ken said, no, you've got to go out, Jackie. And I went out, and I was driving a March, which wasn't all that easy to drive. And I put it second on the grid. Raguzzoni was quickest. And when the visor went down, the lights went out. And all that emotion that you're talking about, I was capable at that time for, I'm not taking any credit for it. It removed emotion. And I drove my quickest lap that I had ever driven at that time in that car to get second on the grid. And I came back in, and as I drew to come to a stop, I burst into tears again. And John Lindsay, a great friend of mine who I know you met in the past, who's sadly passed away, he gave me a bottle of Coca-Cola, and I took one sip out of it, and I smashed it against the wall. I would never have done that in a million years. And that wasn't mind management. It was just deep, deep emotion. And yet, I went into the race the next day and finished second.
Well, I think that leads us nicely on to the next phase of your journey. Driver, entrepreneur, and then team owner, along with your son Paul. You formed Stewart Grand Prix. And again, those watching that are not particularly fond of the Scots might think we're a bit over-tartaned here. But of course, this is a tremendously significant phase of your business life. And ultimately, you were able to take that team along with Paul and many of the other staff that are still part of Red Bull Racing today. You were able to make it a winning Grand Prix team at the Nürburgring in 1999.
Well, again, you were part of the foundations of that. You and a whole lot of other top-line racing drivers, Montoya, Castro Neves, a lot of David Coulthard was there, and so was a whole lot of other drivers. And then, of course, look at that. That's me standing up on the Grand Prix of Germany with, my drivers and Paul's drivers finishing first and third. That was a fantastic thing for a wee racing team. The great thing about it was that we had wonderful sponsors, and we were very cautious with the money. This will be interesting for some folk. We never had an overdraft in the whole time that we had Stewart Grand Prix, or Paul Stewart Racing, by the way. We never had a debt. We never had an overdraft. We never lost money. We always made money every year, and we piled it back into the team. But to win a Grand Prix as a constructor for me was one of the biggest things that's ever happened in my life. Winning as a driver was not that difficult actually, but to be a constructor and to win. And for me to win it in the cockpit and then win it, outside the cockpit. The last Grand Prix, the German Grand Prix, I'm going to show you a picture of it. I'm going to show you a picture up there. Look, that's there is Johnny Herbert finishing the Grand Prix of Germany. And it was just a fantastic day for Helen and I and everybody else.
You also have a large family with your two sons. Clearly, your boys have been too busy to buy a television because we got 9 children between the two of them. So you've got quite a few grandchildren. So
by the way, that's a serious situation because they all have birthdays. And for a Scotsman, that's really a shock when you get to that stage. We've got wonderful, it's a nice balance also between boys and girls. We've got the 9 grandchildren, Helen and I. 1 girl, 8 boys. and guess who's the spoiled one?
How have you been connecting with them? Now, we're obviously doing this across the interweb. Have you been doing something similar? Because some of those grandchildren are growing up and studying in America. So are you a regular FaceTimer with them, or have you had the opportunity now weeks to get them together?
We see each other quite a lot, but we do use this. I mean, by the way, I cannot use an iPad. My dyslexia, I can't find my own name on a keyboard. So I've got somebody who does that all the time. And it's a fantastic instrument, and it's wonderful that we're doing this today. Helen's illness is the biggest problem in the whole thing, because dementia, there is no cure at the present time. And the cost of keeping a dementia patient is twice as much as the combined total as cancer and heart disease. And it's just a global giant. It's where nobody at the present time is able to be helped into removing the illness. And I'm working very hard. We started a charity called Race Against Dementia. And I've been trying to bring all the best specialists in the field all around the world, from America, from Harvard, from everywhere, as well as all the big universities in this country. I'm training them into motorsport. I've had them at Red Bull and McLaren because I want them to see how we in motorsport, Formula One Grand Prix racing, can get things done, find changes that are going to improve performance and success. That doesn't happen in the medical field. It really doesn't. Dementia, for 30 years, there's been no cure or no preventive medicine. Billions have been spent. That doesn't happen in motor racing. Motor racing, problem solving, like that. We are better at it than any other activity in the world. I want, in my time, to be able to infect them with that energy, enthusiasm, to find a cure, and more importantly, even preventive medicine. So that takes up a lot of my time.
And I've seen firsthand your passion and energy for that. So we wish you very, very best with Race Against Dementia and finding prevention or a way for people to live more comfortably with that. Jackie, conscious of the time that we've spent with you this afternoon, I wondered if I can just get a couple of closing thoughts from you. When you look at those 9 grandchildren, and if you were giving your worldly advice to the children of the world to had been a sort of key driver in your success, what would you say to people? What would you like them to be saying to school kids? Remember the words of Sir Jackie Stewart of this is, and whatever those words are, to serve as a motivation or as a guiding light. What do you say to your grandkids?
Work hard. I've got several of my grandchildren are already dyslexic, which is a big problem. But now you can get round it. There's a system to help that. And in Scotland, by the way, we probably rule the world on doing it the right way. Small country, we can get it done. For the children, work hard, work honest, have a sense of humour, hang out with the right people. Don't hang out with the wrong people. You don't. I have a great saying my daddy taught me. If you fly with the crows, you're liable to be shot at. Crows are vermin. If you soar with the eagles, you're above shot. You're hanging out with the right people. And people recognize you by who you're hanging out with and who you're working with and who you choose as a friend. Choose the right people and you will have a better chance of succeeding in whatever you do. You can always improve your performance. I learned from so many other people. I was so lucky. I got really wonderful people to see and for me to try and be with them in their level. King Hussein of Jordan or Lord King of British Airways at that time, or great people I've had, partially because of my motor racing, but great people that I've learned from. There's no shortcuts. You've got to just work hard, but you've got to do it honestly. And like Daddy says, you don't fly with the crows.
Jackie, great words of advice. I've been staring at your Heineken over your shoulder over the last 10 minutes. So I think the only thing...
Mine's frothing. So cheers. I mean, I mean, it's a great product we're both with. So all the very best, David, and continued success.
And to you, Jackie. Thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.